Well, we're back. Gentleman Jim the Tailor.
And Victoria Baylor, professional dressmaker. Hi, guys.
We're so glad to be with you.
We are. We skipped last week, as you may know. Mr. Jim was featured on the Sewing Blab, which is an awesome sewing show that Alethea and Dawn actually co-host. So I hope we didn't have a show last week because I hope you tuned in and watched this interview. If not, we'll post a link to that. Please go and do that. It's a very engaging interview.
I had a lot of fun doing it too, and being able to share a lot of information with her listeners.
Yeah, and they loved him. He was well received. Of course, he's a charmer, so everybody always loves Mr. Jim. So we're excited about this show today. We're going to be covering the 3 biggest misconceptions when it comes to pants fitting.
Oh boy.
Oh my God, and they're doozies. And this comes in the wake of Mr. Jim. Actually, he's about to release his comprehensive pants fitting course. And this is not like anything he's ever done before. We've seen his construction course, but we haven't really seen the insides of how a tailor actually fits pants impeccably.
And there is a difference. There is a difference. We go about a visual, a measurement, and product. We go about it a little different. And I'm going to talk briefly on that, and we'll just go from there.
So I'm super excited. Now, as you know, I did do a pants fitting course on Berta Style, but I am a dressmaker. And most people, like I was telling Mr. Jim, there's more information on from a dressmaker's perspective on how to fit a pair of pants. What's really lacking in the market is a tailor's perspective. And as we know, a lot of people can't uniquely teach. Mr. Jim is actually gifted in the sense that not only is he a master tailor, but he can actually teach the material, which makes it that much more engaging. So trust me, this is something you don't want to miss out on. We're going to go ahead and do like a pre-order for it. It should be coming out in less than a week's time, around 10 days. We'll give you all that information. But definitely, you'll see the link. Go ahead. I know most of you have been waiting for this, so feel free to pre-order. But in the meantime, we'll give you a sneak peek of some of the stuff that he's going to be doing as we cover today's topic, which is 3 of the biggest misconceptions on pants fitting.
Well, what's number 1?
1. Okay. So this one is, let's go through this. This is a funny one for us, and this might burst the bubbles of a lot of people out there. Misconception number 1 when it comes to pants fitting. Measurements are all you need to assure great pants fitting.
That's all you need.
Now, I know that might have shocked some people out there because essentially that's what you're taught is to just measure oneself and then apply those measurements to your pattern. But it's so much more than that, isn't it, Mr. Jim?
Well, it is, because in measuring oneself, where does one measure oneself?
That's right. And the funny thing about measurements is, we know we have tape measures and they curve around, but when you tend to think of measurements, people think of lines and lengths and things like that. But we're curves. And it's oftentimes, you start thinking width and length, but you have to think about how does something shape, and how does that shape impact where the positioning on the pattern should be and where to take it in. It's very complicated.
It is. And do you stand in front of a mirror when you measure yourself? Because a lot of people, they just wrap it around and think they got it in the right spot.
That's right.
That's
tape
what
measure
I
be
said.
Off and
right, it tilt in, and you got to be able to see this. That's why I said, where do you measure yourself?
That's right. Where's the part? And the numbers are important. I always like to think to get you in the garment, but you still have to think about the curvature and the placement of your body, and that's where visual inspection comes in.
That's right.
And I know I do a lot of work for women, especially being a dressmaker, mainly to women. And Mr. Jim has an extensive past as well. But one thing we women don't do, I can necessarily really say, is we don't really look at ourselves.
You don't?
I do, because I admire the human body. Yeah. But a lot of my clients are just, they don't really look at themselves. And the main reason we don't, I think, is like society and some of the negativity, is because when we see ourselves, the first thing people think is, oh, this needs to change, or these thighs are too big, or my knees are this. But erase all that. Take some time to get in front of a mirror.
That's right.
And look at your body, because a lot of the keys to fitting your pants right are in what you see about yourselves. And don't put yourself down. It's not about any of that. You are who you are. You're beautiful as is. But unless you look at yourself, you won't be able to really know how to translate your body type to the pattern. And Mr. Jim's going to cover all of that in his comprehensive course. And do you have any more thoughts about that?
Well, no, only because, you know, like we said, it's measuring yourself and measuring yourself in the right places.
That's right.
Then, in measuring yourself, take the measurements based on where you're going to wear the garment. Gonna wear it too high, gonna wear it low, all of the above.
That's right. And a lot of people don't determine that ahead of time, and then they don't determine what changes they need to make to their pattern based on where they're going to wear it.
Right.
So what we're saying is measurements are great, not discounting that at all, but it takes more than just measuring yourself. And like you said, not measuring yourself haphazardly, but really knowing where you're going to measure yourself at, where that falls on the pattern. And at the same time, visually looking at your body and understanding why you got the measurements you got and where you need to make other adjustments that oftentimes the measurements don't really tell you about.
Let me say this about measurements too. I just thought about it. Especially when it comes to tailored slacks or trousers. When you take these measurements, if you're going to wear some type of foundational support, are you measuring it with the foundational support or without?
This is a good question.
It just dawned on me.
That's an exceptional
because a
question.
lot of women put panty liners and what are the Spanx on
Spanx, yeah, the
every
boy
time they wear
shorts.
pants. Well, guess what? Number one, that's going to change where the measurements are going to be.
That's right. I mean, I always joke, I'm a dressmaker. I don't take anything super serious when it comes to body parts. I'm like, you know, you put that stuff on, you're shifting meat, essentially.
That's what you're doing.
And when you shift meat, and it's funny, case in point, I had a client that I made a beautiful dress for, and she switched bras. Well, when we went for her second fitting, it didn't fit correctly because she didn't have the meat in the right place. You know, Gerda and Bertha weren't sitting where they were sitting last time.
Gerda and Bertha, okay.
Gerda and Bertha. And so we had to get the girls back in the right place. So when you think about it, you're absolutely right. How are you going to wear? What are you going to wear with that garment? Undergarments included.
Yes.
And you want to factor that into your
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Moving on to number 2. This is funny. We always have a conversation about this. Pattern measurements are always accurate. That's a misconception.
Are they?
Well, nothing's always accurate. Not quite.
No.
And then some are really off to the point where I've seen some patterns, and Mr. Jim, I know it because he works with a lot of his own drawn patterns, and then he'll shift to like the commercial ones, and his brain will almost short circuit because he's surprised at how inaccurate they are. But I've seen them where the pants leg were off. One was drafted longer in the front instead of the back, and they didn't meet up.
Yeah.
Well, it's important considering all the different ways, the intricacies of pants making. So you got your crotch curve, you got your length, the depth of the pattern. When something's off, it really throws the whole fit off, right?
I'm going to show them all of that. You know that?
You sure are.
I sure am.
I'm going to show you all of that. But the biggest thing is that oftentimes people don't realize the pattern itself may be a little bit off. And even if it's like 1/8 of an inch off and it's not drafted well, it can throw things off a bit.
And recently, one of my students had a pattern. And we looked at it. My eye caught it. I said, the sides aren't even. And we measured them, and sure enough, where the sides should butt up together, it was actually 1.25 inches off the front and the back.
Ooh.
Okay? But see, a lot of times, like you say, we just get the pattern, cut it out, start stitching, and all of a sudden, something doesn't merge right.
And that was one of the prerequisites for my course. I said you want to use a pattern that you know that either people have reviewed a lot, that they've gotten good results from. Because the worst thing with pants fitting is if you're using a pattern that's inaccurate and you go to try to fix it and it doesn't work out, people tend to think it's them. And the truth is they probably started just with a faulty pattern. And that just makes things worse down the line.
Yeah.
So yes, make sure your patterns are, Mr. Jim will show you how to completely measure a pattern and do a complete overhaul on a pattern where you just convert it to your measurements. And I've seen them do that. That's a lot of hands-on work, but it's something once you learn how to do, it gets really simple, doesn't it?
It really is, because now you have something that you know is going to work. You're trusting someone else, giving you a pattern, and saying this is the size, whatever, and it works. And I'm not saying they don't work, but in today's world, I found a lot of them not working.
That's right.
So we're going to correct all that.
That's right. So they're standardized. Remember that? None of us are standards. That
No.
standards is just a summary or a population of people that's been averaged. Our job is to take a standard pattern and adjust it to our bodies. That's what Mr. Jim teaches. Moving on to misconception number 3. And this is a fun one. It's that you don't have to make any more adjustments after you've corrected a pattern, like the flat pattern method.
Right.
That is incorrect.
Yes, it is.
Explain why.
Well, a lot of times a fabric content will make the exact same thing fit differently.
Absolutely.
Even though you've so-called perfected a pattern for you.
Yes.
And you change fabrics. And all of a sudden you're not getting the same thing. See? So you have to be very careful. And working with fabric from what you've cut and drafted or however you've got to always remember, does it stretch? Is it flex? You know, a lot of times you buy a pattern and it says for knit only, okay, or stretchy fabric only. That only tells you that the manufacturer, they've considered some ease, some stretch on it, and it's going to do something different. So if you've taken one that you perfected for a tight weave fit, and now all of a sudden you put stretch in it, you might get different results.
Absolutely. That's one of the things I love about sewing. I always call it's kind of like a science in picking fabrics, and what you have to do is predict the outcome of what they're going to do. And the more you work with them and the more experienced you are, you can do that. But Mr. Jim's absolutely right. You know, there's always fine tuning needed after you've done your flat pattern you've done your flat pattern work, and then you've translated it into an actual cutout piece in fabric. You still need to always go back and do some fine tuning. You might find you might have to take a dart in a little bit more.
Sure.
If the weave is too tight, you might have to let out a little bit on the side seams. The benefit from doing all your work on the flat pattern is that you do the major stuff that can't necessarily be corrected after the fact, after something's cut out. But there's always room for fine tuning when it comes to fabrication, which is really cool.
I've found through the years listening to people talk about who sew, or who, like we say, make the biggest mistake is they buy a pattern based on what we said, the measurements that they put on the package, but they're not accurate, and they immediately cut it out, sew it up, try it on, and then have to do all these adjustments because they didn't take the time to measure it to see if they were accurate. And when you take the flat pattern once again and the fabric changes, same rules apply.
That's right.
Did you measure it? Or you just cut it out and started sewing it? Now, you know for a fact that once you put the garment together, it's hard for you to pin yourself.
Oh my goodness.
You need somebody else to really do that, because you're trying to pin yourself, look in the mirror. Okay, do I need a little bit more? Look in the mirror. Oh, that's a little too much on this. Always remember this. You might pinch it on one side once you've done it. That's what people have done. And they have more on the side, this side, than the other side. Now you're there trying to balance them all.
And hence the word fine tuning. By the time that thing is cut out, your pants is, the only thing you need to be doing is very minimal adjustments.
Very minimal.
If you're doing anything aside from that, that just points to the fact you didn't make the proper
it's
adjustments.
It's called remaking the garment again.
Pretty much. Because
That's what it
otherwise,
is.
because once you get smile lines in the crotch of a pant, and you can't let those out with like the inseam, or you don't have enough, well, you've got a problem, and that's a fundamental pattern problem. So, and another thing I know Mr. Jim's going to talk about, and this really excites me because, again, so many of us are robbed of making tailored pants and having those in our wardrobe. You can't find them in the store. They fit perfectly. And I know you ladies out there, because a lot of people have emailed me, and with the course I made and the problems that you encounter, some of our bodies are just so different from standard.
You know, that's true.
That, you know, you can't find that in the store. You can't find you in the store. Your wonderfully shaped self your body type is not in the store, and it's up to you to make it. And with pants, the thing that's so sensitive is it's not only just taking your measurements and knowing how to apply them, it's even the order in which you execute which adjustment on your pants. Like when you do what. There's some adjustments you can't make after you've done a length adjustment. So anyway, I'm super excited because this is really great. And what I love about the pants course from Mr. Jim is that it's done from a tailor's perspective. We all can use a tailor's perspective. So, which is really good.
I will give you briefly some areas that I'm going to cover. I'm going to tell you why, and then I'm going to show you why. And this is what we do. Like I say, as a tailor, when I look at somebody, I take an overall visual of their posture, their whole structure, and then I immediately zoom in on what I know from physically looking at them, what needs to be done. Now, let me just show you a few things. A basic pattern. This I retraced from one of the major players in the pattern world, but they're no different. They're all about the same. Things that always go wrong. This area here, this is the back of the pants and the curve. This is what we're talking about. But this area, every time, this is the back. This is too low. So when you ladies bend over, you know what happens.
Yep.
All righty. This is what we're talking about, correcting the patterns. How do we correct that? Well, if you have that problem, right, this is what goes down. Right? You add, right, you add it, and you add extra just right in this area. Mm-hmm. If you add that extra, when you bend over, you get more covered. Now that's just a slight adjustment that you get.
But it makes all the difference.
Makes
by
all the
raising
difference.
the height of that center
Sure.
back
Now,
area.
on a lot of women, they're heavier through the hip line. Right? You need to add the extra before you cut the material out. These are some things, you can't cut it out, sew it up, and say, ooh, that's a little too tight. If you didn't measure it across, is what I'm going to be showing you. If you didn't add the height to the back, which is what I'm going to show you how to do, then you make a garment up and you're not satisfied with the fit. Now let me say this. This same application also is about a skirt too, because you had the same problems.
Exactly.
You know, you had the same problem.
Exactly.
So I'm going to kind of show you how we add to the pattern. Now, when I say add to the pattern, some people take the time to cut that area out, scotch tape it to the pattern, okay, scotch tape it to the pattern, and they got it solved. If you put the pattern on the fabric, you could as well retrace just this area right here, see?
So basically, Mr. Jim has, and it's neat because I've watched him do it, he has time-saving techniques for incorporating your adjustments and making them directly on the fabric. They're simple, you know, whereas some of us are running around trying to get the scotch tape and the tissue paper, and then we're doing the slash and spread. Well, there are ways to still do that and achieve the same effect and make the adjustments. And then one thing I want to point out, which Mr. Jim might not cover here, but the biggest issue I found with, of course, pants fitting, and of course I taught, is mainly, it's the crotch area. A lot of people don't know what to do that, and that area is the intersection point between the front pieces and the back, and then you have 4 pieces. You got 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and it has to get into an area that most of us aren't very familiar, you know what I mean, and the curvature of your body. So Mr. Jim, I know, has like a ton of information on dealing with the crotch area, because you have all kinds of pulls. Oftentimes, one of your techniques, I don't know if you want to share it now, about the length of the crotch for women versus men. You want to give that little quick tip?
The length of the crotch.
Where you like to take off in the front.
Most of your standard patterns in the front. This is not the front, this is the back. But most of them, they've added too much here.
Too much, yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And what happens out, that sticks out in the front. Mm-hmm. Now, on men, we have a little more. We're shaped and we possess things.
That's right.
That kind of fill up the front.
That's all anatomical. Yes.
Okay. Women don't have that. See, so when you get one that has a real deep curve in the front, listen, from this edge here to this edge here, and I'm going to show you that,
Yes.
should never be more than about 1.25 inches. Some of them
Yes.
are this long in the front, and this is the back of the pants.
And I promise you, that one tip, I remember I heard that a few years ago from Mr. Jim, it's just changed the way I sew pants.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you can, without discrimination, just chop that part off.
That's it.
And it does not change any, we get so nervous, like, what do I cut off? That one, and it really drapes inside the thigh perfectly. It's really crazy. So you're right, that one tip on the crotch really does change the look of your back. So it's these kind of tips that a lot of people don't know, a lot of sewers don't know, that Mr. Jim is actually going to bring to the light, and it's their Tailor wonderfully ironclad tips.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to show you guys.
That's what we're going to show you.
Yeah, so anyway, that's enough. We want to belabor it. You can pre-order his course. There will be a link for that. It'll be coming out in the next, like I said, less than 10 days. We're super excited. Stay tuned. We'll see you next week.
We sure will.
As always, last in closing, God has given you amazing gifts. He's also given you an amazing body. Please don't complain about it. It's beautiful in all of its intricacies. But anyway, you've got amazing gifts. Go out, do something with them, serve someone else. It's a beautiful thing. We love you. We'll talk to you guys later.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye now.